She was thrilled to finally meet her baby, until one glance changed everything. A mother knows her baby's cry like she knows her own heartbeat. It's a sound that lives deep inside her. No one has to teach her. It's just there, as natural as breathing. That's why when Nia heard that first cry in the delivery room, strong, clear, alive, she felt that rush of joy she had been dreaming of for months. But then, everything went dark, and when she opened her eyes again, something felt terribly wrong, because what she woke up to wasn't her baby. It all began just a few days earlier. Nia was at home, gently folding a yellow onesie and placing it into her hospital bag. She ran her fingers across the soft cotton and smiled. Her baby was almost here. 9 months of waiting, planning, imagining. Her hands shook slightly, not out of fear, but out of excitement. She'd waited so long for this. David, her husband, walked in and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You okay?" He asked softly, his hand resting on her belly. "Yeah," she said, leaning back into him. "Just making sure everything's perfect." They laughed when the baby kicked, a strong one. "Someone's ready to make an entrance," David joked. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Nia felt a different kind of contraction. Stronger. Lower. Not like the ones she'd been having the past few weeks. She looked at David and said quietly, "I think it's time." They moved quickly but calmly, like they'd practiced. Bags were grabbed, shoes slipped on, keys jingled. They headed out into the cool evening, full of anticipation. But as they neared Westbridge Memorial Hospital, a strange uneasiness began to settle in Nia's chest. The lights of the hospital looked colder than she remembered. The entrance doors opened with a mechanical hiss, and the bright fluorescent lights inside felt too bright. At the front desk, a nurse asked for her name. "Nia Carter," she said, breathing through a contraction. "I called ahead. I'm in labor." The nurse didn't smile. She didn't even make eye contact. She just handed Nia a clipboard and told her to fill out some forms. As Nia sat down to write, she heard quiet whispers between the nurses behind the counter. She couldn't make out the words, but she knew they were about her. Her heart beat a little faster. Something felt off. "Is everything okay?" David asked one of them, his tone polite but firm. "Of course," the nurse replied too quickly. "Just getting her room ready." A younger nurse finally approached, offering a wheelchair and a warmer smile. "Let's get you settled, Nia." As they rolled through the hallways, Nia heard more murmurs. Something about a special case and Protocol 7? She tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just hospital talk. Maybe she was just being hormonal, overthinking things. But inside the delivery room, her unease only grew. The doctor who entered wasn't the one she'd seen her entire pregnancy. "I'm Dr. Williams," he said through his surgical mask. "I'll be handling your delivery tonight." "What happened to Dr. Thompson?" she asked, confused. "He had an emergency," the doctor said shortly. "Now let's get started. We're going to administer a light sedative." Nia sat up. "No, I wrote in my birth plan I wanted a natural birth." "This is standard protocol," the nurse beside her said firmly. Before she could object again, they were already preparing the injection. David tried to step in. "She doesn't want medication." "I'm sorry," the nurse snapped, "but we need you to wait outside now." "What?" "No." David started to protest, but suddenly, security was at the door. 2 large men in uniform, standing there like it was routine. "It's okay," Nia said, even though everything in her body screamed it wasn't. "Just stay close." David gave her hand one last squeeze before being led out. And then Nia was alone. The sedative was fast. Too fast. Within minutes, the room started spinning. Everything blurred. The voices became muffled. The pain of contractions dulled into a fog. She tried to focus, tried to fight it, but the medication was too strong. And then, a sound, a cry. Her baby's cry. Not weak, not quiet. It was strong. Alive. Her heart swelled. She tried to speak. "My baby. Let me see." But the words wouldn't come. And then, silence. Darkness. When she woke again, hours later, the room was cold and quiet. Her head ached. Her mouth felt dry. She blinked, trying to make sense of where she was. A nurse came in, expression blank, holding a small white bundle. "I'm sorry," the nurse said flatly. "Your baby didn't make it." The words hit her like a punch. Nia sat up, arms trembling. As the nurse placed the bundle in her lap, she looked down at the baby, but everything in her soul screamed, "This isn't mine." And that's when Nia knew. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. Nia stared at the tiny, still bundle in her arms. The baby was wrapped tight in a plain white hospital blanket. Everything about it felt wrong. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, frozen. Her hands trembled. Her mind felt heavy from the medication. But her heart was loud. Loud with one clear, painful thought. This isn't my baby. The head shape was different. The weight didn't feel right. And where was the little heart-shaped birthmark? She'd seen it in every ultrasound. She remembered running her finger over the screen, smiling. But now, it was gone. "I heard my baby cry," she whispered. The nurse, still standing near the door, didn't react. "Sometimes the brain plays tricks during traumatic events," she said flatly. "You were sedated. You were under stress. It's not uncommon to believe things that didn't happen." Nia blinked at her. "No, I heard it. My baby cried. It was real." The nurse's eyes didn't soften. "I'll send your husband in." Then she turned and left, the door clicking shut behind her like a lock. Nia sat alone, clutching the baby she didn't believe was hers. Her chest burned, but no tears came. Not yet. Her thoughts kept circling. Where is my baby? What happened? In that room? The door opened again. David entered, eyes red, face pale. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in one night. He rushed to her side. "They told me. I didn't know how to tell you." Nia held the still bundle closer. "David, this isn't our child." He blinked at her. "What do you mean? Course it is. I saw the death certificate. They said you were confused." She looked up at him, her voice shaking but certain. "I heard our baby cry, right before everything went black." David hesitated. "You were sedated. Maybe you dreamed it?" Nia felt something break inside her. Not anger, not grief. Something deeper. Loneliness. "I know what I heard," she said quietly. "And I know this isn't our baby." David looked away. He didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. And that silence felt worse than anything else. Hours passed in a fog. Nurses came and went, checking her vitals, avoiding eye contact. Nobody offered to answer her questions. Nobody brought her medical records. Nobody asked how she was feeling. Finally, a young janitor entered the room. He didn't say much, just emptied the trash, swept the floor. But as he passed her bed, he dropped something gently into the blanket covering her legs. A folded piece of paper. He didn't look at her. He didn't stop moving. But when the door closed behind him, Nia opened the note with shaking hands. "Your baby is alive. Don't trust them." Her breath caught. The words blurred on the page as tears finally came. Not from sadness, but from a spark of hope. She folded the paper quickly and hid it under her pillow just as the nurse returned. "Time for discharge," the nurse said flatly. "Discharge? Already?" Nia blinked. I just gave birth. It's hospital policy. You'll recover more comfortably at home. Where's the doctor? I haven't even seen Dr. Thompson. The nurse's face stayed blank. He's unavailable. David walked in with a small overnight bag. His face was tight. They say everything's in order. We should go. Nia wanted to argue. She wanted to scream. But something told her not to fight. Not yet. Instead, she said nothing as she dressed slowly, her body sore and weak. David helped her up, supporting her weight. Her arms felt empty. The baby, whoever it was, had already been taken away. The key. Nurse said the body would be prepared for release. But Nia knew the truth. Her baby was out there, alive. As they reached the hospital exit, she looked over her shoulder one last time. The walls, the nurses, the cold light, it all seemed to blur into something darker now, something secret. Back home, everything felt wrong. The crib in the nursery stood untouched. The tiny clothes still folded. The scent of baby powder still lingered in the air. David sat on the edge of the bed, silent. Nia walked into the nursery and closed the door behind her. She sat in the rocking chair, holding a tiny hat from her hospital bag. Her baby's hat. She closed her eyes, and again in her memory, she heard that cry. Loud, alive, real. Her fingers tightened around the paper in her pocket. Don't trust them. She opened her eyes, and for the first time since waking up in that hospital room, Nia wasn't scared anymore. She was ready, because no one steals a child from a mother and thinks she won't come for them. The nursery was quiet. Too quiet. Nia sat in the rocking chair for what felt like hours, gently swaying back and forth. The soft creak of the chair was the only sound. She still held the little baby hat in her hand, the one the hospital packed, in the bag. It smelled like new laundry, but it didn't smell like her baby. Her body ached, but her mind was sharp now. She was wide awake. She didn't know who left the note. She didn't know what they saw, or how much they knew. But they knew enough to tell her the truth. Her baby was alive. That meant someone at the hospital was lying. Maybe more than one person. And that terrified her. But it also gave her something stronger than fear. Purpose. She stepped out of the nursery and found David sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. It wasn't even on. David, she said softly, I need your help. He turned toward her slowly. Help with what? She walked over and sat beside him, placing the note in his hand. He read it in silence, lips moving slightly as his eyes scanned the shaky handwriting. Someone risked everything to tell me this, Nia said. We can't ignore it. David's shoulders sank. You're still holding on to this idea that they switched our baby. Nia swallowed hard. Not an idea, a truth. And I don't need anyone to believe it for it to be real. He looked at her for a long time. Something in her voice made him pause. What are you planning? He asked quietly. I'm going back to the hospital, she said. I want to see my medical records. I want to talk to the doctor. The one who delivered the baby, not the one they say was covering. David ran a hand through his hair. They're not going to let you see anything. You heard them. They want us out of their way. Nia's voice grew firmer. Then we don't ask. We find another way. David hesitated. You just gave birth. You need rest. I need answers more. That night, as David slept on the couch, Nia stayed up with her laptop. She started with her own hospital profile. Password protected, of course. But she remembered her login from the patient portal she'd used during her checkups. When she got in, most of the information looked normal at first. Her name, her pregnancy timeline, her weekly visits with Dr. Thompson, everything up to the night of the delivery. Then, nothing. The records for the night of her delivery were missing. No delivery notes, no vitals, no APGAR scores. Just a simple entry, stillbirth. No complications. She stared at the words in disbelief. No complications? That couldn't be. They told her she had a condition. That's why they gave her the sedative. That's why they took David out of the room. But now the records said everything was smooth? She leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding. That wasn't just a lie. That was a cover-up. She clicked through again, and a new detail caught her eye. The doctor listed for the birth wasn't Dr. Thompson. It wasn't even Dr. Williams, the one who told her he'd be filling in. It was someone she'd never seen or heard of. Her stomach turned. They didn't just hide the delivery. They rewrote it entirely. She printed every screen she could. Screenshots, downloads, copies, whatever she could save. She knew they might wipe it clean if they found out she'd looked. The next day, she called the hospital pretending to be a concerned new mom needing to update her birth certificate records. But when she gave her name, the tone on the other end of the line changed quickly. "I'm sorry. We can't release any additional documents to you at this time," the woman said. "Why not? I'm the mother." There was a pause. "That status is currently under review." Nia's breath caught. "What do you mean, under review? I gave birth there." "I'm afraid I can't discuss this over the phone." Click. The line went dead. Under review? Nia sat frozen. What did that even mean? How could her identity as a mother be questioned? She felt her hands clench into fists. This wasn't confusion. This was deliberate. Someone didn't want her asking questions. She stood up and went to the bedroom. David was folding laundry. "They're hiding something," she said. "I saw it. They removed the doctor's name. They replaced parts of the file. They're acting like I was never even there." David didn't say anything. "They're going to get away with it," she said, her voice cracking. "Unless we stop them." David looked up. "How?" "We need help." "From who?" Nia took a deep breath. "There's a journalist," she said. "He wrote about a woman last year, said her baby was stolen from Westbridge. Everyone said she was crazy. But now I wonder if she was the first to see the truth." David hesitated. "You sure you want to go public?" "No," she said. "I don't want to. But I have to." She looked him straight in the eyes. "Because if they think I'm going to forget about my child, they really don't know what kind of mother I am." The next morning, Nia sat at the kitchen table, flipping through an old binder of pregnancy notes. Ultrasounds, appointments, names of nurses she'd seen, everything she'd carefully tracked through her pregnancy. It felt like a lifetime. David stood near the sink, sipping his coffee silently. He hadn't slept well. Neither of them had. The air between them was heavy, filled with unspoken fear and building tension. "I found his name," Nia finally said. "The journalist." David turned to look at her. He wrote a blog about a woman who said her baby was stolen at Westbridge. Everyone called her unstable, said she made it up to cope with grief. But her story, it's like mine. She heard her baby cry too, and then was handed a still bundle. David slowly nodded. "What happened to her?" "She disappeared," Nia said softly. 3 months after her story came out. Disappeared like... No one knows. No social media, no forwarding address. She just vanished. David looked down at his mug. "And you still want to talk to this guy?" "Yes," Nia said firmly, "because if he believed her, maybe he'll believe me too." They searched for hours, scrolling through news sites and old article archives. Finally, they found his name. Taryn Blake. He wasn't with any big outlet, mostly freelance. But he had a reputation for chasing stories no one else would touch. Medical, fraud, whistleblower cases, wrongful convictions. People who were ignored, doubted, or discredited. Ania messaged him through 3 different platforms. Then she found an old business number linked to his name and called. No answer. She left a voicemail. Anyway, my name is Nia Carter. I read your story about the Westbridge mother. I think the same thing happened to me. Please, call me back. The wait was excruciating. Hours passed. She tried not to refresh her inbox every 5 minutes. Finally, her phone rang, unknown number. She answered on the first ring. Hello? Nia? A low voice said. This is Taryn Blake. I got your message. Nia felt her chest tighten. Thank you for calling. I didn't know who else to turn to. There was a pause. Where are you right now? At home. Are you alone? No, my husband's... Here? Another pause. Then I'm coming to you, but I'm parking a block away. If anyone followed me, I don't want to lead them straight to your door. Followed you? I'll explain when I get there, he said. You're not. Crazy, Nia, they are. The line went dead. 40 minutes later, a knock came on the back door, not the front. Taryn stood there in a faded hoodie and worn-out sneakers, carrying a small shoulder bag. He had tired eyes but a steady voice. Mind if I come in? Inside, they sat at the kitchen table. Nia handed him a copy of the note the janitor had slipped her. Taryn studied it, then pulled out a battered notebook and began jotting things down. You said the baby's weight in the autopsy report was 5 pounds. 3 ounces? He asked. Nia nodded, but my last ultrasound said almost 8. Dr. Thompson told me I was carrying a big baby. Taryn tapped his pen against the table. Happens in almost every case I've tracked. Weight discrepancies, faked records, always from hospitals with strong reputations. David leaned forward. What are you saying? That they're stealing babies? Taryn looked them both in the eye. Yes, but only certain babies, healthy, full term, from mothers they think won't question authority, single moms, young moms, minority moms, people without money to fight back. Nia swallowed hard. And if they do fight, they're made to look unstable, Taryn said. Psych evaluations, claims of postpartum delusion. Families are told not to engage. Courts are given fake documents. The system's rigged against them. Why? David asked. Why would anyone do this? Private adoptions, Taryn said. The ones with no waiting. No messy birth parent rights. Rich couples pay hundreds of thousands for clean placements. No one wants a long paper trail. No one wants a mother knocking on the door later. Nia's voice broke. You think my baby's been sold? Taryn lowered his eyes. I think your baby is alive. And if what you're saying is true, that you saw a birthmark on your ultrasound, then we may have something they can't fake. Nia reached into a drawer and pulled out a flash drive. This has my last appointment on it. The ultrasound video. Taryn plugged it into his laptop, fast-forwarding until the baby turned in the image, revealing a small, dark shape near the left shoulder. He zoomed in and froze the frame. A heart, he whispered. They all stared at it. This could blow it open, he said. But we need proof your baby didn't die. More than just your memory. We need records, witnesses, inconsistencies. I tried, Nia said. They've erased everything, changed the names, switched the doctor. They discharged me before. I could even ask questions. Taryn closed his laptop and stood up. Then we find someone inside. Someone who still cares. Nurses talk, staff talk. Someone saw something and regrets staying silent. And if we can't find anyone? David asked. Then we go public anyway, Taryn said, because the one thing they can't fake is a mother who won't stop fighting. Nia stood up. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from determination. Then let's start. 3 days. After Taryn's visit, Nia stood outside Westbridge Memorial again, But this time she wasn't just a patient. She was a mother with a mission. The hospital looked exactly the same. Same gray walls, same automatic doors, same sterile air. But Nia was not the same woman who had entered it days ago. Now she carried quiet fire behind her eyes. Behind her, David waited in the car with Taryn, their plan laid out like pieces on a chessboard. Nia walked in wearing plain scrubs, borrowed from a friend who worked at a local clinic. A stolen badge clipped to her shirt read, "Temporary staff. Supply. Support." Her heart thudded as she walked past the nurses' station. Nobody paid much attention. Just another nameless face in a busy hallway. She took the service elevator to the lower level, the records department. Taryn's contact inside the hospital, a night shift tech named Alina, had agreed to leave one of the doors unlocked for her. Alina had worked at Westbridge for 7 years. She'd seen things that kept her up at night, and she was ready to help even if it cost her job. The hallway was empty. The door was slightly open, just like they planned. Inside, the records room smelled of old paper and cold air. Rows of locked cabinets lined the walls, and a single computer blinked in standby mode at the desk. Nia slipped in and quietly closed the door behind her. Her hands shook as she sat down at the terminal. She'd rehearsed this with Taryn: what files to look for, what codes to search, how to bypass the access limits using Alina's temporary login. She typed in her patient, "Number error, file restricted." Her heart skipped. She tried again, this time by name. "Patient record inaccessible. Authorization required." She whispered under her breath, "Come on." Just as she was about to give up, she remembered something. Dr. Thompson's ID Taryn had found it listed on an old appointment reminder email. She typed it in as the reference physician, bypassing the block. Access granted. The screen filled with lines of her medical history: checkups, labs, ultrasound appointments, everything up to the day of the delivery. Then, 2 entries on the same date, one under Nia Carter, the other under Jane Carter, both time-stamped during her labor. Her stomach twisted. She opened the second entry. It was for an unregistered live birth. No mother listed, no father listed. But the infant's weight and APGAR scores were there. 7 pounds, 15 ounces, and under identifying marks, small heart-shaped pigmentation on left shoulder. Nia gasped. That was her baby. Her hands flew across the keyboard, saving copies of every screen, every file. She inserted a flash drive and transferred the entire folder, her proof, but just as she pulled it out, a voice broke the silence. Well, looks like someone's been doing a little unauthorized browsing." She spun around. Nurse Holloway stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a faint smirk on her face. "How did you get in here?" she asked calmly, like she wasn't surprised at all. Nia's mind raced. "I was just cleaning. I got turned around." "Save it," the nurse said, stepping inside. "We were wondering when you'd come back." Nia stepped backward slowly. "I want to see Dr. Thompson. He's on leave, indefinitely." Nia's breath caught. "What did you do to him?" Nurse Holloway shrugged. "Some people know how to follow orders. Others need to be removed." That's when Nia realized this wasn't about one doctor. This was organized. This was big. "I know my baby's alive," Nia said, her voice low but steady. "And I have proof." Holloway's eyes narrowed. "That's very unfortunate for you." She reached for her radio. Nia didn't wait. She turned and bolted out of the room, her feet pounding against the tile floor. Holloway's voice shouted behind her, "Security! Code Gray! Lower level!" Alarms started blaring. Nia ran, clutching the flash drive tight in her hand. She pushed, through a fire exit, bursting out into a side corridor. Taryn's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Nia, you've got 2 guards moving toward the east wing. Don't take the elevators, stairs to your left. She didn't respond, just ran. Down. The stairwell, up one floor. Out into a back hallway where Taryn waited by a side door, dressed like a delivery guy. "Let's go," he said, opening the door just as David pulled up in the car. Nia dove into the back seat, breathless, shaking, but still holding the flash. Drive. As they sped away from the hospital, sirens echoed behind them. David looked at her in the rearview mirror. "Did you get it?" Nia nodded, eyes wide. "They registered my baby as a separate birth, under a fake name. But the records, the birthmark, everything matches." Taryn pulled out his laptop, plugging in the drive as they drove. He scrolled through the files in silence, his expression growing darker with every click. "This isn't just one baby," he said finally. "There are dozens of entries like this. Dozens." David looked over. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Taryn replied, "this hospital has been doing this for a long time, and your baby is just the tip of it." The car was silent except for the hum of the tires on the road. Nia sat in the back seat, staring out the window, still clutching the flash drive like it was her baby. The weight of what she had seen in those files was crushing. Not just her child, dozens of babies, all listed under fake identities. No mothers, no fathers, just descriptions, birthmarks, APGAR scores, weight, status, transferred. But to where? Taryn's voice finally broke the silence. "I know where they're taking the babies." Both Nia and David looked at him. "There's a place," Taryn continued, tapping on his phone. "It's not listed as a medical facility. It's private, officially registered as a family wellness center out in the hills, but it's owned by a shell company connected to a private adoption agency." David frowned. "How do you know that?" "I've been following this agency for over a year," Taryn said. "Every time a stillbirth mother goes public, within days, this place shows activity. Staff hired, deliveries made, sometimes new adoptions announced, always high-profile clients, politicians, corporate elites, the kind of people who don't wait on adoption wait lists." Nia clenched her fists. "That's where they're keeping my baby." Taryn nodded. "And tomorrow morning they're hosting a private event there, by invitation only. New families coming to meet pre-approved newborns. I managed to get one name off the guest list." "Who?" David asked. Taryn turned his phone screen around. The picture showed a smiling older couple. The woman was holding a baby. On the baby's left shoulder, a small smudge, a heart-shaped birthmark. Nia leaned forward, her voice cracked. "That's my baby." She felt her chest tighten. The photo was grainy, but her heart didn't need high resolution. She knew, just like she knew the cry, just like she knew the feel of that tiny kick under her ribs. "A mother doesn't forget." "We need to get in," she said. Taryn nodded. "I've arranged a way. I have a friend who works for the catering company doing the event. They're short-staffed and desperate. You'll be one of the servers." David immediately shook his head. "No, it's too risky." "I have to," Nia said. "If I get inside, I can find the baby, get pictures, proof. We can go to the authorities with something they can't erase or deny." "And if they recognize you?" "They won't," Taryn said. "We'll change her appearance. Hair, eyes, clothes. They'll be watching for a grieving mother, not a quiet server with a tray of champagne." David still looked uneasy, but he knew he couldn't stop her. That night, Nia sat at the edge of the motel bed while Taryn went over the plan one last time. They'd memorized the layout of the estate, entrances, exits, camera blind spots. There would be other staff there, but she had one job: find the nursery, get the baby's photo, get out. "Don't try to grab the baby," Taryn warned. "Not yet. Just get the proof. We'll go back with federal agents once we have what we need." "I'm not leaving without my child," Nia said, her voice barely above a whisper. Taryn looked at her for a long moment. Then we'd better make sure we don't mess this up. The next morning, the estate was already buzzing. When Nia arrived with the catering van, the building was massive. Clean white walls, tall windows, perfect landscaping. It didn't look like a place where lives were stolen. It looked like a magazine cover. But inside, something darker was hiding. Nia moved through the rooms quietly, dressed in a black shirt and slacks, her hair tucked into a low bun, colored, contacts changing her eyes from brown to hazel. She balanced a tray of wine glasses and kept her head low. No eye contact, no talking. The guests were wealthy, polished, smiling, laughing. Most of them white. Most of them looking around like they were at a charity gala, not a human trafficking operation. Then she saw it. A woman in designer heels walked past, holding a baby. The baby's tiny arm was visible for a moment. And there it was again, the birthmark. Nia's knees nearly gave out. She backed into a hallway and pressed her earpiece. "Taryn, I saw the baby. Left wing. I'm going in." "No," his voice buzzed back. "Security's tight on that side. Stick to the plan." But she was already moving. Through the hallway, past the locked nursery door. She waited until a nurse came out, then slipped in behind before it could close. Inside were 6 bassinets, 6 babies, all asleep, all perfect. She moved slowly, silently, scanning their faces. And then, there, the 3rd crib, her baby. She dropped to her knees, covering her mouth as the tears came. This wasn't just a theory. This was real. Her baby was here, breathing, safe. For now. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and snapped 3 quick photos. One of the baby, one of the ID tag on the crib, one of the birthmark. Just then, a voice behind her. "You." Nia turned. It was Nurse Holloway. Again. Nia froze. "How did you—" Before Holloway could finish, Nia shoved past her and ran. Out of the nursery. "Down the hall! Stop her!" Holloway shouted. "That's the mother!" 2 guards gave chase. Nia sprinted for the back hallway, dodging a guest who nearly spilled a drink. "I've got the pictures!" She gasped into her earpiece. "Taryn's," voice came through, panicked. "Exit left side. We're pulling around." Nia burst through the kitchen doors and into the loading bay just as the van screeched to a halt. David flung the door open. She dove in. The van peeled away, tires screeching. Inside, Nia held her phone to her chest, still breathless, her heart hammering. The photos glowed on the screen. David looked over her shoulder. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. It was there. Baby, their child, still alive. Taryn drove in silence, white-knuckling the wheel. "We've got what we need," he said. "Now we go to the FBI." Nia stared at the screen again, one tear sliding down her cheek. "No," she whispered. "Now we bring her home." The sun was just beginning to rise when they pulled into the FBI field office. Nia sat in the back of the van, still clutching her phone with the baby's photos glowing on the screen. The images felt unreal, like dreams captured in pixels. But she knew the truth. She had held her breath as the shutter clicked. She had seen that tiny birthmark. That was her child. Alive. David helped her out of the van. Taryn led them through the side entrance of the federal building, avoiding the reporters now crowding the main gates. Word had leaked. Whispers were flying. Something big was happening at the estate. Inside, Agent Parker met them with a tight expression. He had sharp eyes, but a calm voice. "Let's talk in my office." Nia sat across from him, hands folded over the flash drive. "This," she said quietly, sliding the photos across the desk, "is my daughter." Parker stared at the images, then at the birth certificate records Taryn had collected. His jaw tightened. "You said this birthmark was visible in the ultrasound?" "Yes." He nodded, standing. I'll be right back. Minutes passed. Nia's heart raced. Her eyes didn't leave the baby's photo. She couldn't blink, couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled, but she refused to break. Not now. When Parker returned, he had a team with him. Techs, agents, 2 attorneys. He closed the blinds behind him and looked straight at Nia. "You were right," he said. Nia nearly collapsed. David grabbed her hand, squeezing tight. Parker continued. "We've identified a covert operation that involves doctors, private adoption brokers, and judges. They've been falsifying birth and death certificates, rerouting newborns into illegal adoptions for high-paying clients. It's been going on for years." Taryn leaned forward. "How deep does it go?" Parker hesitated. "It goes all the way up. Multiple hospitals, law enforcement, even federal oversight agencies. But your evidence? It changes everything. We now have a confirmed visual of the baby, a matching medical record, a timeline of events, and, most importantly, a mother who never stopped searching." He turned to Nia. "We're going to get your baby back." She broke into quiet tears, not from grief this time, but from relief. By noon, the media had exploded. Headlines scrolled across TV screens. FBI investigates private adoption fraud ring linked to high-profile clients. Mother claims baby was stolen at birth, and she might be right. Secret birth records discovered at prominent hospital. Nia's face was everywhere, but this time, she wasn't a grieving mother to be pitied. She was a fighter, a symbol. By evening, the FBI raided the private estate. They found 6 babies, including Nia's. When an agent placed her child in her arms, it was like time stopped. Her baby's eyes opened slowly. No fear, no confusion, just calm, as if the child somehow knew they were home. Nia held her close, breathing in the soft, warm scent of new life. Her heart, which had been in pieces for days, came back together. In one quiet heartbeat, David stood beside her, tears in his eyes. He had been strong for her, but now he finally allowed himself to feel it too. "We got her," he whispered. "We really got her." Taryn stood at a distance, filming from the edge of the scene. His documentary would break the story wide, open. But more than that, it would become something else. A message to every parent who had been told to move on, to forget, to let go. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And your truth matters. Over the following weeks, arrests piled up. Doctors, nurses, adoption brokers, even a sitting senator, the same one who'd smiled on TV while cradling another mother's child. His career ended in silence and shame. The hospitals involved were placed under investigation. Some shut down entirely. Records long buried were finally brought to light. Hundreds of families came forward. Women who had been told their babies had died. Fathers who had never held their children. Grandparents who had quietly wondered why things felt wrong. A public DNA registry was created, backed by a federal task force, and every recovered child was matched with their birth family. Some reunions were joyful, some painful, some impossible. But the silence had been shattered. And Nia? She chose not to disappear into privacy. Instead, she stood on stages. She told her story. Not for fame, not for pity, but because there were still mothers out there waiting for the truth. And she wasn't going to stop until every one of them had the same chance she did. "I'm not a hero," she told one reporter. "I'm just a mother who refused to be lied to." Taryn's documentary went viral. The footage of Nia running from that estate, phone in hand, was replayed millions of times. It didn't just change public opinion. It opened eyes. Months later, Nia sat in the nursery, rocking her daughter gently to sleep. The walls, once filled with grief, now carried warmth and quiet laughter. David walked in holding a letter. "Another one from the registry," he said. "Another family found their child. Nia smiled, brushing a soft curl from her daughter's forehead. That makes 17 this week. You did that, he said. You gave people hope. No, she whispered. She did. The baby stirred in her arms, yawning. Her tiny hand reached up and gripped Nia's finger tight. Outside, the world kept turning, but inside that home, in that small, quiet room, love had won. Because in the end, truth finds its way back. No matter how far it's stolen, no matter how many lies are layered over it, a mother's love will always bring it home, and that's something no power, no money, no institution can ever erase.